If anyone had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here, writing about heartbreak, I'd have laughed in their face. My husband, Steve, was the epitome of everything I'd ever dreamed of in a partner. We had met in a tiny bookstore on Kensington High Street. He had accidentally knocked a pile of books onto the floor while reaching for one on the top shelf, and I'd been the unfortunate soul standing nearby who ended up helping him pick them up. By the time the last book was back in place, he'd already managed to capture my heart with his crooked smile and endearing clumsiness. Steve was the kind of man who made you feel like the only person in the world. He'd surprise me with flowers for no reason at all, write little notes that he'd slip into my handbag, and always really listened when I spoke. Our life together was a picture of bliss. Saturday mornings meant pancakes in the kitchen, with Steve flipping them in the air just to make me laugh, and evenings were for curling up on the sofa, watching old black and white movies. But then, Alice moved in. It was a rainy Tuesday when I first saw her. She was unloading boxes from a small moving van parked in front of the flat next door. Her auburn hair, damp from the drizzle, clung to her neck, and her laugh echoed as she chatted with the movers. Steve had gone out to help her before I could even suggest it. At first, I thought nothing of it. Steve was always the helpful type. "She's new to London," he said that evening over dinner, his fork playing idly with his mashed potatoes. "Doesn't know many people yet. We should invite her over sometime." I nodded, agreeing with his suggestion. After all, being neighborly was never a bad thing. But soon, I began to notice subtle changes in Steve. It started small. He'd come home later than usual, brushing off my questions with vague excuses about work or errands. His laughter, once reserved for our private moments, seemed to ring louder when Alice was around. I'd find them talking in the hallway, their voices low and conspiratorial, and once, when I walked into the living room, they fell silent as though I'd interrupted something. "You're imagining things, Becky," I told myself more times than I could count. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, and it grew with every passing day. The final straw came one Saturday afternoon. I'd planned a surprise picnic for us in Hyde Park, something to rekindle the spark that felt dimmer than before. But Steve had other plans. "I'm helping Alice assemble some furniture," he said, barely glancing up from his phone. "Can't it wait?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. He hesitated, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. "She needs help, Becky. I'll be back in a couple of hours." He didn't come back until late that evening. I'd like to say I confronted him then and there, demanded answers to the questions that burned inside me. But I didn't. Instead, I sat alone in the dim light of our living room, the uneaten picnic basket still on the table, wondering when our marriage had begun to slip through my fingers. Was I being paranoid, reading too much into things that had innocent explanations? Or was there more to Steve's friendship with Alice than he let on? My heart wanted to believe him, to trust the man who had once made me feel like the center of his universe. But my mind whispered warnings, urging me to dig deeper, to uncover the truth. And so, the cracks in our perfect paradise widened, leaving me standing at the edge, unsure whether to leap or hold on.